I walked into a bookstore in Peekskill, New York, where we live, and I grabbed a dusty book off the shelf. It was the autobiography of George Washington. And it was a dusty old book, and I sat down, well, this ought to be interesting to read. Actually, it was really boring. It just talked about supplies and having things shipped here and there, but at some point, it did give me the impression that for all the faults of our forefathers, and there are certainly plenty, George Washington had like 300 slaves. And for all that, they still did something that was unique and amazing. And one of the most amazing things he did was that after his term as president, they wanted to make him a king. And instead, he said, nah, I'm done. And by that restraint, he set this country on a course of having peaceful transfers of power up until very recently. And so, again, for all their faults, it is worth thinking about how we started. Was riding down the thruways, the rain began to pour. I pulled into a roadside inn and stumbled through the door. The room was dank and musty, all the furniture was worn. The only light a neon sign was flashing off and on. The man behind the counter said, "Sonny, would you like a beer?" Sign above the bar read, "George Washington slept here." George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. Peace on earth, let freedom ring. George Washington slept here. As he handed me a brew, a few drops spilled upon the floor. As he began to tell a tale he told 1,000 times before. A farmer from Virginia just answering his country's call. Lost every major battle save the biggest of them all. In the freezing dead of winter on a starless Christmas Eve, across the icy river in the darkness like a thief, the enemy in revelry was taken by surprise. 1,000 Hessian prisoners neath the cold New Jersey skies. George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. Peace on earth, let freedom ring. George Washington slept here. From Germantown to Boston, from Princeton to White Plains, he led a ragtag army on a suicide campaign. Frozen hell at Valley Forge is when it takes its toll. These simple lines, these are the times that try men's souls. Without a prayer against all odds, they finally turn the tide. After all the smoke had cleared, 10,000 men had died. George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. Peace on earth, let freedom ring. George Washington slept here. From mountaintops to valleys, from far inland to the sea, they fought for their independence and their new democracy. Across the Hudson River they built a mighty chain to keep the British ships from sailing north to Lake Champlain. They forged it in their foundries from 100 tons of iron ore, stretched across 1,000 links from shore to shore. George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. Peace on earth, let freedom ring. George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. Peace on earth, let freedom ring. George Washington slept here. Any other man, he said, would have crowned himself as king. But this one stayed his hand so a new nation could take wing. From the first shot heard round the world till the final soldier fell, he did a job he never sought, and he served his country well. And if it's not self-evident, you do well to recall, here's a man who stood for liberty and justice for us all. George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. Peace on earth, let freedom ring. George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. Peace on earth, let freedom ring. George Washington slept here. All at once the rain had stopped. The moon was shining bright. So I took one last sip before heading back into the night. And I thought about the colonists and their fight for liberty, and how the actions of a single man can alter history. And as I lay a tip upon the bar, I felt a sudden chill. There upon the counter lay a $1 bill. George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. Peace on earth, let freedom ring. George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. Peace on earth, let freedom ring. George Washington slept here. Now listen, wayward children, as you travel far and wide. Remember, no matter where you go, we're all the same inside. Never take for granted all the freedoms we enjoy, or a day will come some wicked son will break you like a toy. And don't forget the kind of world this might have been if America had not been strong enough to fight and win. George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. Peace on earth, let freedom ring. George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. George Washington slept here. Peace on earth, let freedom ring. George Washington slept here.